Hello, everybody. My name is Lewis Lee, and this is Plan and Traffic. And we do this every Thursday night. So tell all your friends and family that if you're a car person, come hang out with us, talk cars, boats, trucks, anything you put gas in. And if you go to our YouTube channel, The Plan and Traffic Show, and hit the podcast, you can get all of our previous shows on podcast now. So you can listen to them in your car, on your phone, wherever you can listen to podcasts, you can find us. So please check that out. And please like, share, and subscribe. All right, we're going to get our special guest in tonight. And hi, Ray.
Hey, Lewis. Were you wondering who that guy was sitting next to you?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's me.
My man Ray from Motor Mouth Radio, the worldwide syndicated show.
Yeah, well, we try. Stuffed up as usual, but we're doing our thing.
Yeah. Who'd you have on the show this week?
We had Dave Hayes from Hot Rod Innovations.
Okay.
Yeah, we followed up with him on the Sunday show. Actually, I had him booked for the Sunday, and then he kind of snuck in on Thursday, which was kind of cool. So it was kind of a rehash of what we talked about last week with Dave, just a little bit more of a condensed version because we don't have the same amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
But Dave knocked it out of the park. He did a great job.
Yeah, he's moving along like a herd of turtles.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to talk him into doing the grill for my bus.
Oh, yeah.
So I've been kicking ideas to him. I think he's going to hook me up with something special.
Interesting. I'm thinking about buying a C10.
Yeah, that's what he posted something on Instagram today, I think.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, man, that'd look good on the bus with maybe the logo in the middle, the international logo, a little bit bigger.
Go. Sure.
Maybe throw some lights behind it so I look fancy when I'm coming across the hill.
Hell yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Definitely.
All right.
Good deal.
Let's get the fellas in. We get Tyler in.
There he is.
Hey, no class waving.
Tyler. The Nelsons. Hello, fellas.
Hello, Nelsons. How's it going?
Not too bad. How about yourselves?
Oh, can't complain. The weather's starting to break, and I'm still living, so that's a good thing.
Yep. Always a good thing. Yep.
So Calvin, tell us where we can tell us about you a little bit and about your YouTube channel and what you're specialized.
Sure. Yeah. My name's Calvin. This is my dad, Andrew. We have the channel that you can see right there, Nivlac57 here on YouTube. And we sort of specialize in a lot of drag racing type content. We do a little bit of land speed racing as well. And sort of what we've grown our following around is we have started messing with these Vortec 4200 motors out of the Trailblazer platform. Mm-hmm. And what we have been able to do with these engines is basically take them out of the prison that GM put them in and put them into cooler chassis. And we've found that they're quite capable motors. The most amount of horsepower that we've made one to this date is 867 horsepower.
Nice.
And for the wheels. On a totally stock engine, we've gotten as much of as 824 horsepower. We're putting 40 pounds of boost to one. The inline six architecture seems to like that. So
nice.
That's sort of what we've grown our following with. We're starting to get into the Gen 5 LT motors here of late. Just because we think they're the next big thing that's going to come onto the horizon. So, that's kind of what we're into. It's a very much a family-oriented thing. It's Dad and I do all the work.
Right.
You'll notice that he's actually in a sling right now, and that was because
he was doing man stuff, huh?
Yeah, well, yeah. About 3 months ago, he was in a pretty bad accident at a sick week, and we built this 1959 Volvo PV 544. We picked it up out of a junkyard on October 22nd, October 11th of 2022. And 4 months later to the day, we were in Florida with the thing, competing at Sick Week. We built a 25.3 cage for the thing. I think it was a 3. Yeah, 650 cert roll cage. We put a Vortec 4200 into it, and we were just, that was literally the first time we were getting passes on the car, and we were gradually working our way up. And at 13 PSI on the third day, unfortunately, the engine let go at 150 miles per hour.
Wow.
And, Dad went into a tumble, and at one point he was 30 feet in the air and on fire. And unfortunately, the car is totaled. But yeah.
Well, see, that's real man stuff there.
Yeah. So
at least it was just the car that got totaled and not Dad.
Yep. Yeah, that's definitely my takeaway from it. I'd happily give up all the hours and money and time that we put into the thing to, have my dad sitting next to me right now. So,
right.
It's he got pretty banged up. He's still has effects from the concussion. So, go easy on him.
I have to say that model Volvo is, a lot of people have never even seen one before.
Yep.
And a lot of other people would say, man, that thing is butt ugly. I want to say, I think it makes a really cool looking race car.
Yeah, it was, I mean, as soon as I saw it in the junkyard, I was like, yeah, I think we're gonna take that one home. I thought it was an old Ford. And because it didn't have any of the body panels on the thing, and it was a cool car, but we've learned a lot from that. The center of gravity was a little high. The track width on them is pretty narrow, and they're pretty short wheelbase, and that makes them want to turn easily and flip easily.
Yeah.
And,
is that the one with the funny back end? Looks like kind of.
It looks like a Beetle.
It's kind of like a truck in the front and a Volkswagen in the back.
Yeah.
But it's kind of, I mean, you got to realize those things, well, you do realize those things were never intended to do anything near what you're doing with it. But
Nope.
it's like when guys would race Anglias,
Yep.
these little English Fiats, and you're throwing Hemis in them. So, yeah, it's a wild ride for sure. I tried Tyler's alley, I think.
Yeah, so Tyler was talking to me the other day, talking about that motor. Then he brought you up. He goes, "Oh, you gotta get him on the show." So you're here because of Tyler.
Yep. Well, yeah, we talked on the phone the other day. It was good talking to him. So
I called intending to spend like maybe 5 or 10 minutes just asking him a couple questions and asking him if he'd be interested in working together on a couple of future projects. And I think we ended up spending like an hour and 20 minutes on the phone or something like that. So Calvin's definitely he's a cool dude, and we have a lot of parallel thought processes on a lot of stuff. So
Good.
I have a picture pulled up of I believe this is Calvin's car here. Let me see here if I can do the little present thing here.
So where are you guys out of?
we're out of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, we're at
York.
York.
Yep.
We're not too far from you.
Okay.
We're from Youngstown. We're in Youngstown, me and Tyler.
Okay. Nice.
You get it, Ty?
Yeah, here you go.
All right, let me share it.
Yep, there you go.
That's it.
Yep.
These are screens from your YouTube video. In fact, all I did was type in 57 Volvo wagon and started to pull up your stuff, and then I kind of narrowed it down.
Yeah.
There's probably not that many of them out there.
No.
You know what? There's one of those running around here, Tyler.
Is there?
I think it's blue. Yeah.
Could be. So, Calvin, you want to talk us through what kind of like got you started on looking at the 4200 as a platform? Like, you just you a diehard 2JZ lover, and you're like, man, I really wish these were cheaper in the U.S. or what?
No, well, my first car was a '63 Studebaker Lark, But that was sort of a larger build. And so my parents got me a 64 Nova to sort of fill the gap that my uncle had fixed up. And that 64 Nova was sort of my first hot rod. And it had a 250 inline six in it. And, I just fell in love with the 250 inline six. The thing ran 11s in the eighth. It was painfully slow. It's just barely getting to 60 miles per hour in the eighth mile. But I just loved the way, that the engine ran. It was so smooth and it just made such a cool noise. And from there, I started looking at, I think I might be an inline six guy. So I started looking at options, and, the 2JZs, they're so expensive. That's where, everybody goes, and there's a good reason for it. But, to buy a stock motor for $2,000 just doesn't make sense. You could build an LS that could take, a lot of horsepower for that amount of money. And I just couldn't justify that. And some friends of ours sort of turned me on to these Trailblazer motors, the Vortec 4200s. And I started doing research on them. At the time that I had the Nova, they were still a little bit expensive, just because they were still new. This was when I was like 16, 17, 18. So that would have been 2010-ish. So they had just stopped production on those cars. So they were still relatively new. Everybody remembers when the LS came out, you couldn't touch one for less than $2,000. Now they're dime a dozen. But so I always wanted to mess with one of these 4200s, never got around to it, got through college, and, started working full time. And it came around that apparently I talked about this a bunch when I was in college. And a friend of mine was like, hey, I ran into him at a gas station, and he's like, hey, did you ever mess with one of them Trailblazer motors? And I said, well, no, I haven't, but I should. So later that day, I was on Facebook Marketplace, and I found my first one for $100.
Wow.
And that's sort of how it all started. They're a very, very good architecture. It's a dual overhead cam inline six with variable valve timing on the exhaust. They have a spectacular cylinder head. I mean, there's guys, I came to find this out later. There's guys that run them in competition eliminator in NHRA that they're making 650 horsepower with them at 10,000 RPMs, naturally aspirated. So, these heads, I hear guys saying high 300 CFM out of these cylinder heads. So
better than an LS head.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It'll kick the crap out of an LS head. It's, it's a dual overhead 4-valve, it's why the Coyotes are so great. It's just, they're getting crazy amounts of horsepower out of a 5-liter. It's just insane. So we start messing with them, and I was always told, by all there sort of was this, this older crowd that had messed with the 4200s, and they had all these presumptions and all these preconceived notions about the engine. And I was told by quite a few people, 400 horsepower, that's really, you're on borrowed time there. You're going to blow it up. And I had a feeling that wasn't true, just because I saw what everybody was doing with the LS stuff. And we kept pushing them harder and harder and harder, and come to find out a stock engine, we had a stock bottom end 4200 in my station wagon, and I took it to Midwest Drags, 850 miles of street driving, 700 wheel horsepower. I probably made it was probably 12 to 14 passes throughout that week, just one after another. Lots of times I was hot lapping the car, like literally just right back into the staging lanes after I just made a pass with the thing, and it didn't skip a beat. So, it's as we mess with them more and more, we're finding that they're more and more capable. It's still hard to argue with the LS for sure, but the inline six architecture definitely has some pretty strong advantages. With an LS, with the oiling system, you have your main gets fed oil, and then it has to take oil and feed it to two separate rod bearings. And on an inline six, you have one main bearing feeding one rod bearing, one main feeding one rod. So the oiling system on an inline six is just automatically going to be better. All of your stresses in an inline six are going to be in a vertical axis, whereas on a V8, you're going to have forces going this way and forces going this way. So it's going to want to make your main cap move side to side, whereas on an inline six, it's all going to be in a vertical, dimension. So, there's lots of advantages, some disadvantages. Obviously, it's harder to package a longer engine, but
maybe not though. I mean, it's also going to be somewhat narrower too, especially if you consider exhaust routing and stuff like that.
Yep, but if you're working with something with a real short engine bay, I can understand why it might not be the option for you. But if you're working on a Fox body or something that came with an inline six, then they're a very capable platform. And as the 2JZs and the Japanese alternatives sort of age out and become more and more expensive, there's a lot of people that can't stand the sound of a V8. I'm not one of those people. I do enjoy the sound of a V8, but there's some people who absolutely cannot stand it, and they will do everything they can to have an inline six. And for those people, like me,
there you go.
Biggest packaging challenge has been the height of the engine with the VVT and the dual overhead cam arrangement. The sprockets at the front of the engine have the front of the engine very high.
Yep.
So you have to work around that.
Yep. So
yeah, that makes sense. Well, and it has another thing going for it, and that is the plentiful availability, because I mean, for like 6 years, and I'm looking at Wikipedia right now, I mean, it came in every mid-sized SUV GM made for like 6 or 7 years. Yep. And I know there's millions of them out there.
Oh, yeah. Go for a drive. You'll see.
Yeah, I went to the hardware store today, and I passed like 11 Trailblazers.
Yep. They're everywhere. It's crazy, and they're still everywhere in the junkyard. Our local junkyard has 20 of them sitting in there. It's they're very easy to find at the moment.
Yeah. So how's the fuel mileage on those after you get in them a little bit?
I mean, with mine on the highway, I was getting with no lockup, and I was having to spin the thing like 2,700 RPM to do highway speeds. I was getting like low 20s. So I think with an overdrive and a lockup, I think you'd get pretty decent fuel mileage with it.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a pretty torquey engine. The straight sixes usually are. You may be, I don't know, with this media blitz here, this may be they may be starting to get sucked out of the junkyards as of tomorrow now. Once people hear that something works.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't want to use the six. That's the other thing. Like, you said some guys don't like the 8. Whatever.
Yep.
I was thinking about it today, at thinking about this podcast coming up, and some ideas to bring up about questions to ask, what to talk about, and it occurred to me, it's very apropos that this engine debuted in a platform that the headline name was Trailblazer, right? Yep. Because I was thinking that you are kind of a trailblazer in taking this engine and pushing it into an aftermarket in the larger media space, where it's becoming more visible. And I think that if we could get some aftermarket companies on board with supplying some parts for these things, that they would really, really take off. Again, you said that they're plentiful, they're cost effective, they handle power decently in stock form. You know, and like we said, there's some engine bays where you just can't package a V8 in it very well. Long, narrow cars like MGs, S2000s, all kinds of that stuff, you know.
Well, you know, that's a great point, Tyler, and that leads me to ask Calvin, what type of parts, if you could have parts that don't exist now for that engine, what would they be? So what's not available is what I'm asking.
Yeah, there's a company in Australia called Artec Performance that just came out with a turbo manifold for them. It's a beautiful piece. It's a investment cast stainless steel manifold. It's like art, and
it is a beautiful piece for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fantastic piece. So, you know, other parts that I really think are required are oil pans. I mean, that's the number one thing. They only came in a front sump configuration. You know, for most chassis, that's not going to work. I mean,
plus for racing, you usually want you want a rear sump because that's where all your oil's going.
Yep. Well, yeah, that's the other huge component to it, but you know, that's not always a problem for a lot of people. But yeah, the front sump is like super deep. And
you guys might have to do like what the Chrysler guys did back in the 60s and early 70s, because they had a front sump and a very, and guys would shorten the front and actually they'd re-engineer the pickup and deepen the back. I mean, they had to do it at home, of course. You had hand
and that's essentially what we're doing, what we are doing right now, because there are no aftermarket options. So you're forced to take the factory pan, modify it. Unfortunately, it's cast aluminum, and after it's been sitting in a vehicle for a long time and it gets all the pores and everything get filled with aluminum or with the oil, they're a nightmare. They're a nightmare to weld. I mean, it's just
a good hot seat tank.
Yeah,
to suck that oil out. Yeah, maybe we got to get Dave Hayes from Hot Rod Innovations on the case, and he seems to like making stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that was kind of one of the outcomes of my conversation with Calvin the other day was, I know a lot of people in the industry, as he does as well, but I think if we kind of start pushing from both sides, maybe we can push an idea in somebody's head somewhere and maybe get some products made for these motors.
The other thing I think of, the next thing I think of is dry sump.
Yep. So actually, that's a pretty common upgrade to these engines, being they're running competition eliminator, obviously getting as much of that windage out of the crankcase is, that you're going to want that as much as possible for a naturally aspirated, especially when you're spinning it to, 11,000 RPM.
Right.
So yeah, it's that's I mean, obviously the average guy, you're probably not going to want to dry sump, but
that's a big investment.
So what do you do for exhaust on your engine? Did you make set of headers, or was there something available?
So for a while, we were having to make our own stuff. There's a company called racemufflers.com that makes the flange, and you can buy that and then make a tubular manifold. I'm actually trying to sell my first turbo manifold at the moment. Well, I mean, my first one, I actually cut the flange out. We have a Bridgeport milling machine, and I actually cut it out myself. But you pretty much have to make your own stuff at the or not anymore now that Artec has their solutions. The other option is we've also on other cars, we've taken the factory exhaust manifold sort of comes down and necks down to a merge point and then flows out the back of the car. And where all of the 6 tubes merge together, it actually almost perfectly matches up to a T4 exhaust flange. And you can just lop that off and then weld a T4 flange on and then have your turbo mounted down low. So we've done that on a few cars, but that's not really a great solution for every chassis. It's a lot of cars don't have room around there just because there's a cross member or whatever.
Yeah, like I was trying to visualize my Trailblazer engine bay. I don't think that would work because there's like the inner fender and the top of the suspension sits right down in there.
Yep.
Well, that's one of the beauties of the Artec manifold. They worked with Calvin to make sure that it fit a Fox body chassis, the Trailblazer chassis, so you can buy something off the shelf that's going to fit a huge number of vehicles. And the wastegate discharge point is positioned so that it'll work with those two chassis. It's a really nice piece.
Yep.
Cool.
Probably the other thing that needs to be developed, because most people don't have aluminum welders, is the intake manifold, and there's a couple in the works already out there, but nothing is immediately available. So everything we've done to date, Calvin actually made the intake for, and he bought a welder years ago, learned how to aluminum weld, and he's made 4 so far?
Yeah.
Yep, four of them so far. And it's neat because we've pulled engines right out of the junkyard, threw them in a car, and the one car on its third pass, it was running 9s, and it was bone stock right out of the junkyard.
Wow,
that's cool.
Nice.
That's great.
Now, have you ever messed with any of the other Atlas platforms, the 5-cylinder or the 4-cylinder variants?
We haven't. We're racers, and in most cases, if you allow me to run more displacement or spread that load across more cylinders, more connecting rods, I'm going to take that. So we have talked about messing with the 2.9 liter, the 4-cylinder, simply because we've talked about doing land speed racing with it. And one of the class displacement limits is 3 liters. So that falls just below that limitation there. So we've talked about messing with that. There's actually a guy that runs one of those. I don't know if he's in Comp Eliminator, but he's spinning the thing 9,700 RPM. He makes like 450 horsepower naturally aspirated with one of those 4-cylinders. And they're really impressive. He just deletes the balance shafts because the 4 and 5 cylinders have balance shafts. So he just deletes them, they're for low speed vibration. And he just leaves them sitting in there and just unhooks the chain and makes it so they can't fall out. And it's pretty impressive what he's doing with that. So, yeah.
So if I was writing down a list, 2 lists, I on the one hand, I have a list of, I've got X chassis and I want to grab a 5.3 or a 6-liter LS and put in it versus maybe I'll do a 4200. What's the cost comparison of those 2 endeavors? Because, the Chevy small block is, there's parts everywhere for it. It's like an iPhone. You can get transmissions all the way back from the 60s and 70s that'll bolt right to it.
Yep.
What about the 4200? How's it compare?
So it's going to be more expensive. Unless you can fab your own stuff. For us, we can do it for about the same cost, maybe even a little less.
We're under.
I mean, because. I mean,
we buy cams, but 3-gram cams.
Yeah.
And then you market a lifter kit, a lash adjuster kit.
Yeah.
But
what gets expensive with an LS is you have to replace all these gaskets. If something goes bad, you got to put different lifters in it a lot of times because you got to delete the displacement on demand. You got to plug things. You got to do all sorts of stuff. And with the 4200, you don't have to do any of that. We're running stock valve train. I spin mine 8,000 RPM all the time. And so you don't have to worry about any of that stuff. So you'll probably save a little bit on the valve train. You know, a set of valve springs for an LS, you're probably going to have $300 or more into. Whereas on the 4200, if you're just running a stock engine, you know, you can run the stock stuff. But with the cams, it's only, I think it's like $120 for a set of 24 springs. So it's, you know,
as a reground cam, you're not adding any total lobe lift, right? You're just changing your ramp profile, or how's that work?
No,
cutting the base down.
Yeah, you cut the base circle down, and then you have to shim the lash adjusters. I actually make a kit to install the you know, since you reduce the base circle, you need to shim the one side, but you can't put shims on the other side because it's basically just like a little shelf, and the shims can wiggle out. So I make a kit that has a different lash adjuster that is a little bit taller and makes up the gap. So
are you for those who don't maybe immediately visualize what the top end of a overhead cam motor looks like, are you making the valve effectively taller, or are you pushing it further open with changing the follower's geometry?
So you're not changing the position of the valve at all. The valve is in the same location, but it has a little rocker arm. So you have your valve, it pushes, this is your valve, this is your follower, and then the cam pushes down on the follower. So when you reduce your base circle here, you have to shim your follower so that it's at a more of an angle, and then it you know, still touches the camshaft. So basically there's a little thing called a lash adjuster in there, which basically is a hydraulic. It looks like the top of it looks like the top of a push rod, and it just has a little plunger in there. It looks kind of like a lifter in a you know, push rod engine, and it just adjusts the lash and keeps the lash or the cam follower tight up against the camshaft.
The bell housing adapter,
yeah. So
and the starter adapter.
Yeah. So going back to your original question of the cost to cost, so the engines, they have a different bell housing bolt pattern, but the dowel pins for the transmission are in the same exact location as an LS or a small block Chevy. So that makes it super easy to make a adapter plate. There's
because it'll line itself up, and you basically just have to bolt it on.
Exactly. Yeah. So you just get extended dowels. It'll line itself up. It's easy to make your own. You could make it with transfer punches. I've yet to have somebody actually follow my advice there, because it really would be pretty simple. And sometimes I'm tempted to just like show people how easy it would be. But yeah. But there is a company called M-Tech Motorsports that makes adapter flanges. They're pretty affordable. I think they're like $185 plus shipping.
With the hardware.
Yeah, with the hardware. So that's pretty cheap. I mean, go price out an adapter for anything else.
Buy a hunk of metal anymore.
Yeah. So
yeah, in fact, I'm astounded it's that cheap.
Yeah, I was kind of amazed because a lot of people were like, you know, the first time we got into it, we actually laid out our own adapter plate, found all the dimensions, and I actually have a site. Just type in Vortec 4200 Wiki on Google, and I have a site that has tons of information on these motors, and I put all the dimensions and everything on there. And come to find out, you know, tons of people are like, oh, you should make adapter plates. You should make adapter plates. And then I find this M-Tech place, and I'm like, I can't make him that cheap. Like, that's
right.
I don't know how he makes any money. Yeah, in fact, I don't know how he's not losing money. So,
right. Must have got a bunch of material for free or something.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
That's probably it.
So that's another hurdle you got to get over, but not really that big of a deal. And then the starter is the other thing. You can either notch your transmission bell housing to make it so that the factory starter will, be able to be installed, or we also sell a starter adapter that basically adapts a Tilton style starter from like a small block Chevy, and it basically makes it so that can you don't have to modify your bell housing then on like a turbo 400 or whatever you're running, and that just bolts in place and you're good to go. So
yeah, people typically start to frown when you say, "Oh, you need to cut a big notch out of your Ultra Bell on your Turbo 400."
Yep. Yep. So yeah,
those are available through the channel.
Yep. Yeah. On packracing.com, we have them for sale, but I have a whole video on details for all that. So I mean, once you get past all that stuff, it's not really too bad. So I mean,
other than those couple things, it's probably kind of mostly your standard swap stuff, right? Like motor mounts, all that stuff.
I mean, the intake manifold and the turbo manifold and the oil pan become the next challenge for most people. Obviously, I got a welder, we got grinders. I'll get to work making my own, but for the average guy, they're going to have to pay somebody to do that. There's actually there's a Facebook page for these motors as well, and there's a guy on there that he does oil pans for people a lot. And he's pretty reasonable. He'll do an oil pan for like $700. And he's like buying brand new metal because you can still get oil pans for these things brand new. And then he modifies them and makes it so that they're rear sump and they're ready to go. So for the amount of time that he has in them, I'm sure that's a very generous rate. So
right.
Yep. But
all right. Well, it is 9:38, so I'm going to bring in some of the fellas that hang out with us, and they can ask you some questions. And these are our main guys,
regular contributors.
Yeah, contributors. Yep.
Cool.
Hey guys,
Papa Squirrel, you want in? Okay. What up, fellas?
Just another Thursday. Exciting Thursday.
Yeah.
Trying to survive. Well, I'm a 5-cylinder guy, so I think that you should put a 5-cylinder in there next time.
I've been tempted to a few times, but that's one less rod that can take the load, and you can't. From what I read, you can't delete the balance shafts on the 5-cylinders. So that can be a little annoying too. That's more oiling demands for the engine.
You find yourself a wreck TT, Audi TT,
actually
20-valve turbo, and you got yourself a hell of a ride.
To clarify, Calvin, Brian wasn't talking about a GM 5-cylinder.
Yes.
So we should get that out there.
Fair enough. Yeah.
When I say 5-cylinder, there's only one that's German. So, they've only been around for the last 45 years, and you can't kill them. I just brought one back to life after 18 years sitting in the backyard. So,
but people don't swap them into anything else either. So there's probably a reason for that.
Well, they don't have the creative mind. This guy's over here already got the welder and grinder. That's all you need.
What kind of power can you get out of them?
Huh?
What kind of power can you get out of them?
Well, the Audi race team, was what, 700 horsepower?
They don't count. They're factory sponsored.
Yeah, well. Yeah. So, I mean,
what about the guy? What about the guy down the road that has one and he's bolting parts on? What are those guys making?
To be honest, I really don't know. I mean, right offhand, but before Ken Block died, he was pumping out over what, 1,500 horsepower.
Yeah.
Well, at the end of the day, you got to build what makes you happy, and that's why I got into the inline sixes. There's everybody in my life was like, "Why are you messing with this stupid 6-cylinder?" Like,
oh no, I fully agree, and it's funny because like in mine, I have a Audi. I do have an Audi Motorsport cam in it, and it does sound different. And everybody always goes, "What the hell is that?" Because of the sound. I mean, there is a difference.
I took a twin turbo LS running engine out of my station wagon to put one of these inline sixes into it because I knew it would make me happier. So I get where your head's at.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, it's unfortunately with anything German, it's so damn expensive to go fast. But I mean, like I said, you find a wrecked 20 valve turbo, 5-cylinder one, and you got yourself a good platform. Then after that, it's all it's all electronics after that. I mean, you don't really have to do much inside, a little cleaning up, but it's all, computer work after that for the power. So, And if you really want to get super squirrely, you go ahead and take the whole drivetrain and make it all-wheel drive, and you'll have something that climbs a mountain. You can call it a goat instead of anything else because it'll climb anything.
We've done front-wheel drive, and I don't care what you say. All-wheel drive is also front-wheel drive. And I've experienced torque steer with a 700 horsepower front wheel drive car, and I don't need to do that again.
It's a little sketchy, especially on doing any kind of highway pulls under full throttle. That's right out the window.
I really appreciate what guys are doing with the all wheel drive stuff, but you see those GTRs at like World Cup, those guys
they're wheeling them.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yep. You got to just you kind of have to let the car go where it's going to go and
follow it.
Hang on. So,
yep.
Have you seen a lot of people in the off-road community souping up the 4200s, or not really?
There's a lot of people using them for conversions, but you don't see them making them put a lot of horsepower out.
Yeah,
I think if you look at the Jeep community, it's been surprising how many you see in the Jeeps. The aluminum engine, all aluminum engine, and the availability is certainly attractive. They struggle with the oil pans, and most of those guys are just looking for a good, stout, torquey engine. And stock as they came out of the Trailblazer, they were 291 horsepower. So just a little bit of exhaust work, and you're going to be over 300 horsepower.
Right.
I was going to say Jeeps.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you think maybe with some aftermarket oil pan availability, some of these off-road guys might look into swapping those in for their big cast iron Jeep boat anchors?
Well, you're seeing them there, and the other place that's been a pleasant surprise is to see how many hot rods, street rods are showing up with them. They're becoming more and more common, especially with the willingness to dare to be different as guys are doing, Buicks and Olds and the non-Chevy Ford old hot rod builds. It's really neat to the last few car shows that I've been to. You're starting to see them pop up, and they're all coming up with very creative ways to build their own oil pans. But you can tell that some of the guys really struggled to make something that didn't leak. It's loaded with booger welds, and that's unfortunately the reality when you're trying to weld aluminum that's been saturated in oil for decades.
Right. Yeah. I thought it'd be really cool to see a 4200 in like a sandrail or something like that.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
I was watching your videos today, and I basically was getting myself in trouble. My wife called on her lunch break, and I was telling her about the videos, and I want to see about importing a Opel Omega and converting it to a Lotus Carlton. And one of the biggest things is when I've looked at it before is we don't have those motors here. What if I run into problems? And after watching your video, I was like, there's the answer right there. And I was telling her about it. So kind of in the hot seat right now.
Isaac, there's your problem, dude. You tell your wife everything you want to do.
That's what we're for, buddy.
Do like the rest of us and tell her after it's already bought.
Yeah.
I know, right?
Oh, gee, look what showed up in the garage. Running, warm,
Yeah,
hot.
we're here for you, man. Just come on here and vent.
Isaac needs more coaching. You know, he's a great coach, but he needs a little more coaching in this regard, I think. We'll take care of it. Don't worry.
We're very fortunate. Paula, my wife, is a huge supporter of what we do. She, the amount of effort that she puts in to make this successful is something that can't be underestimated. You know, without the whole family being involved, his older brother, my oldest son, his older brother helps out on occasion, and you know, it's good to get the whole family involved. But my wife has her own hot rod and has been very strong supporter of everything we do, and that it can't go understated.
That's great.
Yes, that's a nice thing to have your spouse on board.
Or fighting you for parts.
Yeah.
No, she just took what she wanted. There was no fight.
Yeah.
Right. We had a Crate LS3 sitting there that I had picked up because it got passed along and the price got low enough that I could grab it, and it disappeared one day and showed up in her truck.
What do you know? Amazing how that happens, isn't it?
Yep, for sure.
Yeah.
So, since the Volvo had its accident on Sick Week, and just in case anybody's watching and didn't know what Sick Week was, that's essentially the same thing as like the Hot Rod Drag Week. It's a drag and drive event where you have a series of racetracks you go to and you make a pass, and I believe you can make as many passes as you want, right? And then within your class, you pick the 5 best to average together for your time. Is that the way Sick Week runs usually?
Yep. Yeah,
we were on the one and done path.
Yeah.
When we had the wreck, and the goal was to get to the last day, and then we were going to turn all the knobs to 11. And it came as a big surprise for us to have the failure that we did, because we've pushed those engines so hard without any issues, and have that thing let loose at 13 pounds. It just, even today, we can see what happened, and it's hard to believe that something happened.
Yeah.
What was the actual cause of the failure? After the forensics were done?
So we found out that a sleeve had cracked, and it was filling one of the cylinders with coolant. And every morning we'd start the thing up, and it would have a dead hole. And we think that it was just gradually weakening that connecting rod, and it just we thought it was ignition coils. We kept throwing ignition coils at it. And I think we were running smart coils on the thing, which is an aftermarket racing coil. And one of the things that they do, if they can't light off the spark, basically they just start to eat themselves. They just start to melt down on the inside. If they can build all that energy up, but they can't get it out, they just start to melt internally. And so we were going through them like they were free. And they're not cheap. So after, I think we went through 5 of them, because I had a full set of 6 sitting there spare. And we went through 5 of them, and I was like, okay, we gotta do something here. So we broke down day 1, going through these coils, and we ended up converting the car to an LS style coil for the remainder of the event. And those have a built-in circuit that will sort of take care of that energy and get rid of it gracefully without destroying itself. But it's smart coil puts out 4 times the energy, so you got some trade-offs.
Yeah. Too bad it couldn't be smarter in the energy management.
Yeah. Well, when you're putting out that type of energy, it's like arc welder type of energy. I'm sure there's only so much you can do. So,
well, to that point, what What plugs do you run in that engine? Spark plugs?
They're just NGK. I found this. They actually run the same style spark plug as the Gen 5 LT motors. So there's a lot of suppliers that are making racing style plugs for them, and I'm able to piggyback off of that effort. They're a little funny. They're almost like an LS, but they just got a little bit more thread. And the Gen 5 motors have that little extra thread, so you can use them.
And going back to the forensic, the cylinder cracked. It hammered the rod and piston. The piston or the rod eventually liberated itself, took a hunk of the block out.
Big chunk.
And huge. If you go to the video, it's a massive hole. The chunk of it got under the tire and took the tire out, and physics took over. And
so it wasn't even an oil down that wiped you out. It was you actually physically blew out a tire.
Anybody who has raced has driven through their own oil, and it's like driving on ice. You just don't overreact. You get through it, and then you bring the car back under control. And unfortunately, when the car took off going to the left, it was no doubt on oil, but the car reacted in such a way that I knew something was wrong. And when the car turned, all I saw was parachuting car from the other guy. And I know at that point I was on the brakes hard. So, unbeknownst to me that a tire was out, but ultimately because of that, it led to the car with the narrow track. It started to roll. And, once something that's got a high center of gravity, narrow track starts rolling, you're along for the ride. Physics have taken over. And, unfortunately the car's totaled, and I unfortunately had broken ribs, broken vertebrae, severely bruised femur, concussion, 3 muscles in my shoulder got torn off, and 5 weeks ago those got operated on. And it's I'll be back in the saddle by drag week, but it's this has been a long, hard. It's 4 months ago is when the accident happened, and we got a long way to go.
Yeah. So other than your physical recovery, what's the racing program's recovery path from here, since the Volvo is probably not coming back?
Well, there's nothing left of the Volvo other than, by God's grace, I was saved. It's ultimately destroyed. You look at the car, it looks like a banana shape. The front end's rolled over, the back end's rolled over, and the driver's door is in perfect condition. It didn't even knock the driver's mirror off.
The glass, all the glass in the car is still, except for the front and rear, but all the glass in the car is still intact.
Yeah. And
Volvo builds them tough.
Yeah. So it's gone, but ultimately, a lot of projects that we had pushed off are now being dragged forward. It's going to take a little bit to, recover financially to get these things out there. And that's why some of the video volume has had to slow down, because we're having to recover. That car was going to be, the star of a number of videos, but
your content plan kind of got derailed.
It did, and we started the 2 dudes with 2 studs. We were both going to show up at drag week with manually shifted Studebaker, but there's too much risk in me trying to shift until I fully recover. So when we started building the Nova, which is going to be an automatic, and Calvin will be putting out some videos on that within the month.
Yeah, we after the event, we started the stick shift builds, and we were expecting Dad to improve, and it was just over time he just wasn't improving. He still wasn't able to move his shoulder, and come to find out, he had torn three
muscles?
Yeah, 3 muscles off his rotator cuff.
Wow!
And that is why he is currently in a sling, because he is in the process of healing. It's going well, but we're not gonna push that by having him drive a stick shift. So unfortunately, that had to get put on the shelf, and we'll get it back off in a little while. So
what motors were going to be in the Studebakers in front of those stick shift trannies?
So we wanted to do a old school,
Gen 1.
Yeah, we were going to do an old
Gen
school
5
versus new school. So his is going to have a Gen 1. His is built as a old school gasser style build. We're going to try and make it as period correct as possible. In a lot of respects, the transmission wouldn't have been, but and then mine is a Gen 5 L83, V8, and we're gonna, basically have the most modern of the small block Chevy and the very the OG. So yeah, that was the idea there. But
I love what you guys are doing.
Yep.
I think it's great.
Yeah.
So right now we're pretty excited about the accident drove us to pick a car that we've been wanting to build, and some people turn their nose on the fourth gen Novas, but we're doing a
76
Gen 5 in a 76 Nova.
Okay.
To match his Gen 5 engine, and that's the car we'll try and take to drag week. So we're making very slow progress, one-handed.
Yeah. We're absolutely blown away by what the Gen 5 LT motors, what guys are able to do with them with a relatively mild camshaft. They're getting close to 2 horsepower per cubic inch out of those motors. It's just, naturally aspirated, without spinning the crap out of them. Like, it's just insane. So
yeah, that direct injection is pretty incredible.
Yep.
What's good, Terry?
What's up, everyone? How y'all doing?
Hey, Terry.
What's up, Terry?
Good. Better late than never, right?
Yeah, man. A little 8-year-old didn't want to go to bed.
Yeah, give him cough syrup.
Right, Benny Grill.
Granddad.
Yeah. So how's everyone doing?
Good.
We're hanging in.
Yeah.
Hanging in there.
Come on, say a little chatter out there. Come
I
on,
know.
especially
Come
Brian
on.
over there. What's up, bro?
Going back to the Volvo, what size rear tire were you running on that?
It was a 275 drag radial. We were first time we've run one of them, and very first pass on the car, it was a 137 60 foot, and we hadn't even started to go after it. Just took a guess on the shock, took a guess on the 4-link. Well, Dad will tell you that it was years of experience, and
educated guess.
Definitely had a lot of experience with it, but got to start somewhere. So
we left on a very little boost and at a low RPM and at 137. It ate up that launch, and we knew that that if it can't test well, it'll never do well. If you can't come out of the box and be close, you're never going to get to where you want to go. And the first pass down the track, we instantly knew we were going to have something that was going to hit home runs. Second pass on the car was a 929 at 137, 140. Yeah. 140. So 929 second pass. This is low boost, nothing turned up, everything turned down. And when you have good results immediately out of the box, you can be very encouraged. If you come out of the box and you're struggling, you're pretty much not going to get there. And we knew that this thing was going to get to the home run derby on its first date. And so the 275s worked excellent. At Sick Week, they do a radial prep, which it's really neat how they run that event. They they break you up in A, B, C, and D groups, and they try and group cars of similar performance together, and they do the radial prep. We know that we've got have our stuff together when we go to drag week, because drag week does not do a radial prep, and we plan to run radials. So we're going to have to be very focused on our shock settings to get those things that they'll go down the first time, because again, our hopes are to do a one and done and move on to the next track at drag week also.
Right. And which car do you think you'll be running there?
The goal is to take that 4th gen Nova.
Yeah. 76 Nova. We're going to put Caltrax in the back, split mono lease, move the leaf spring in. We're doing a Gen 5 L86 LT1, same displacement, basically the same engine. And the goal is to run the naturally aspirated class at drag week and, see how well we can do with basically a stock engine with a camshaft.
Yeah, we'll bring more 6-cylinder stuff out, and that's probably what we'll take to sick week. We didn't want to get too stretched out with our program, and again, keeping things simple while I'm recovering was one of a bolt together hot rod, get there, attend, and let the recovery continue until we can be more focused on a more intense build.
How much weight are you going to cut out of the car?
Funny you should say that. So we sort of my dad got into the 4th gen X bodies because he had he had this 77 4-door Nova, very first car I ever drove, and it was a 4-door, and he cut out how many?
1,162 pounds.
He took 1,162 pounds out of that car. Just gutted the doors, drilled holes in everything, like the frame rails, the subframe on them. He Swiss cheesed the thing with, just spending hours with a hole saw. And so
I had a customer that had a 944 turbo, and every year I'd prep it ready for racing, and he would bring me a scale and a basket and said, "More weight out, please."
Yep.
And I finally got to the point where I told him to stop eating cheeseburgers.
There
So I could only take out so much more before there was nothing left.
Yep.
Well, that car, it became quite the joke. We would tell people, if you can't see it, it's not there.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that was a fun car, and we're not going to go to that level quite with the car that we just picked up, just because
not going to bust out the hole saws, and
we might for a few spots.
Yeah, we're gonna get a lot of weight out of the car, but it's going to be able to compete in multiple classes at the different Dragon drives. So we're not going to be able to take the full frame horn off the car like we did on the other Nova. I converted it to a rack and pinion, took the front frame horns off. This car is going to have to retain the frame horns in order to be class legal. So there's a number of differences that we know that are going to take place, but there's also other areas that not carrying the extra doors is going to help. So being a 2-door, we're going to, our hopes are to get the car, down to 2,700. And, that ought to be a pretty comprehensive package to have the power of the Gen 5 engine pushing that along. And, our long-term goals is to actually modify the engine, get it into the 8s naturally aspirated. So that's the target, future target, but the immediate target is to get the car together and get laps on it before we head to South Carolina for drag week.
That should definitely be doable. I was just seeing something posted a couple weeks ago where someone took a 6th gen Camaro and got it into the very, very high 8s and naturally aspirated with a lot of weight reduction.
Yep.
So, and I think he was still over 3,000 pounds.
Yep.
So that should be pretty good. Now, of course, you have that uphill battle with your mono leafs and Caltrax, but that'll have to be overcome.
We'll take that on.
Yeah.
We've been leaf spring racers for a long
Here's
time.
guys that 60 foot with leaf springs. I'm not too worried about it.
Yeah,
there you go.
You come to this part of the country, you better know your squat about leaf springs, because some of the fastest cars in the country with leaf springs are right within 50 miles of us.
No, good deal. So Terry's a huge Trailblazer guy, but he's been in the LS Trailblazer community. And I told him the other day that I was thinking about teaming up with you guys to do like a sloppy backyard build style turbo Trailblazer and put it on the track and see if I can't whoop his SS's butt. What do you think about that,
Terry? SS. blown SS. You forgot that.
Oh yeah, sorry. You got the boosty boy.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm learning something tonight. I didn't. Because Tyler even told me about. Hey, you got these guys that do a lot of work with the. What is it? What cubic inch would those 6 cylinders be?
They're 254 cubic inches.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm interested in knowing what it's about, because that would open up a whole, for people who who have the Trailblazers and the Envoys, and even that engine went up throughout a lot of cars in that time.
Yep.
It's probably still going today. I'm not sure if did they discontinue that engine now?
Yeah.
2009.
Yeah. They stopped making them. Yeah. They closed the plant. The only plant that made the 4200, they closed during the recession, and unfortunately that was the end.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know what happened? I mean, they're just sitting in junkyards, I'm sure.
Yep.
No one's thinking about them, but
everywhere.
All you gotta do is take a couple of those engines and just be like, bam, this is what you can do. And you get someone like Tyler, and I say let's have some fun with him.
It's been neat. The reception is very strong, because there's a craving for the 6-cylinder, and there's a craving for something that's not a 2JZ, because people don't want to spend that kind of money. So you've got two major influences that just make this package so attractive. It has the issue of the lack of support, and we were talking earlier about, you get an oil pan under these engines and they're going to be popping into everything, because once you have one out of the vehicle and you get an oil pan on it, you've got something that's worth running. Those things make nutso torque. Yeah. And you throw a turbo at it and you make nutso horsepower.
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of people are importing these Barra motors from Australia. And I didn't coin the phrase, but people have started to call the 4200 the Amera Barra.
Is that on this?
No, not that one.
Okay.
It's a very similar engine. They're very similar displacement. The Australian engine is a 4-liter. These are 4.2. They have very similar bore, stroke, very similar overall dimensions of the engine, similar capabilities naturally, with a stock engine.
But you don't have to import it. It's already here.
Exactly.
It's right here. And you'll probably get a whole bunch of them in junkyards.
Yeah, and you can go to Advanced Auto and you can get parts for it.
Yeah.
Are the internals forged? I mean, it's a dumb question. I don't think they are, but
no, they are.
If you're
not.
going to be pushing that much horsepower, I mean, I would imagine you would need some. What does that say?
We sell these shirts. It's
America. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Vortec 4200.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that'd be really cool. I'm definitely gonna reach out to some of the people I know at Summit and a couple other places and see if we can get. It sounds to me like maybe the push should really be on oil pans. I think that sounds like that might be the biggest thing the aftermarket needs to really get kickstarted.
Right now, that is the most. If you have to go through a 10-step process to get somewhere, that's going to get you the first 4 steps down the path, because everything else becomes easy. It's an inline engine. It's easy.
Yeah, it's not like
once you get past the hurdle.
It's not like a V8 where you got to get 2 intake flanges to be in the right plane with one another. It's just one plane and one. It's
froze.
Yeah, a lot of that stuff becomes easy.
Yeah.
This is maybe a stupid question. Is it like, okay, is it a front sump like the Trailblazer SS?
Yes, and that's the problem, because we're pulling 1.3 60 foots, which is not insanely fast, but that anything quicker than 145, anything quicker than a 1.5 throws the oil into the back of the engine. It completely runs everything out of your sump. So if you got a front sump and all the oil's in the back, it's only a matter of time till you injure the parts. So if you start with a rear sump, it can't run away from itself, because that's where it's going to go. And your biggest challenge then becomes, similar to any inline 6, you need to be more aware of your deceleration, and as AccuSump becomes something that you need. We unfortunately learned that lesson the hard way. And you go to World Cup or any of these competitions where the inline 6s are prevalent, and every one of them has an AccuSump on it, and that has to do with the length of that engine. It's that oil's, you hit the brakes, it goes the opposite direction. And
yeah.
Yep.
Well, you know what they have on the Trailblazer, which I put on mine, because the only alternative, okay, this is what the alternative is, as far as keeping oil in the front sump. You change the oil pan to I think it's a Corvette oil pan, but the problem is that if you did that, the air conditioning bracket that holds the air conditioning in, that's part of the oil pan on the original Trailblazer.
Same thing
so
on the
you'd have to find a way to reroute all that, and it's just a pain. But then I think it was Hansen, I forget his last name. They made a baffle block off plate, so it keeps the oil from sloshing back.
Yep.
So you have a sump about maybe this big, the pickup goes in it, and before, without that plate, the oil would just skip back. But you're talking like 4 cylinders as opposed to 6, like you guys.
Yeah.
And so what it does is you put this plate on, and it blocks the oil from going to the back.
Yep.
And you put an extra, I think it's 6 quarts. You put an extra, like maybe half quart or maybe a 7th quart in, and that keeps the pump, what's called pickup tube, submerged.
Yep.
And that was the answer to me, because it made no sense for me to try to change that pan and all that nonsense. You just drop the pan and put that little baffle in there. It's riveted in, and it seems to, knock on wood. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's funny you say that the AC compressor on the 4200s also bolts partially onto the oil pan. The 2 bottom bolts are on the oil pan. It's kind of funny. But
the front diff in the 4-wheel drive version still bolts to the pan too, probably, right?
Yep. But they actually, the 2002 and 2003 4200s actually have a baffled oil pan. And I think GM did some cost cutting. They clearly did some cost cutting, because there's a whole bunch of features on the 02 and 03 engines. There's a whole bunch of features that's totally unique to them. They have a different damper that's a dual mass harmonic damper. There's all sorts of stuff you can go. The flex plate on the thing has way more material to it. It's a way stronger flex plate. I actually try to hunt them down and use them on everything just because they have more material. And the other thing is the baffled oil pan. They come baffled with a little baffle from the factory. So.
So that helps quite a bit with the initial slosh of the sump, but you're still, under hard acceleration, like on the drag strip, you're still, as the oil wants to drain down, it's not going to return to that front sump nearly as well as it would to a rear sump, right? So that's the other half of the battle is you're kind of running on a timer, right? You're draining your sump, and it can't return to the sump until you're done with your run. So that's
Yep.
why you need to run the accumulator.
And front sump packaging an engine with a front sump is very difficult, especially on a GM, because they were all rear sump chassis. You know, Firebird, Camaro, Nova, Chevelle, everything was a rear sump. So, you know, to convert it over,
Yeah.
That was the same reason Brian can speak to. The same reason that the Fords had a problem back in the day. The 341s, the 390s, the 428s. They, you know, it was the same problem. A lot of potential, but that oil pan restricted them.
Yes, when I was a kid and I raced Fords, you could take off the line. You know, you'd let the clutch fly, and you could watch the oil pressure drop and come back as you were getting ready to pull the next gear. It would just be coming back about the time you would pull second gear.
Yeah.
Well, and of course their answer to try to fix that was you put the 8-quart pan on it. You know, it's just you couldn't change it, so you just add more oil.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, that was the only way of doing it. Yep.
Once upon a time, you know, it wasn't until the Fox body came along that they changed to the rear sump on the small block, and that you know, as soon as they changed to that, it stopped taking away all of those ridiculous problems that the oiling systems had on the Ford engine, and you know, it really allowed them to take off through the 80s and become, you know, what they are. You know, it's no matter what brand you're loyal to, nobody can discount the fact that the Fox body Mustangs were a super success for Ford, and you know, every single manufacturer, every single chassis can be made to work, and you got to have your basics right, and that's, you know, the oil pan on the Trailblazer engine that's so basic, but that's what we need.
Right. Yeah. Well, you guys are big fans of putting engines where they didn't originally come from, obviously, right? as Terry and I also are. Have you guys ever seen any GM motors in Mopars?
Wow.
Yes.
I mean, definitely, yeah.
That'll raise an eyebrow or two.
Both of your eyebrows went up, Ray.
That's because I haven't seen one. I'm all for it, but
you're going to.
Cool.
Yeah, we've done some crazy transplants. You know, we put that LS4 front wheel drive into a Eagle Talon. We still hold the record for the quickest and fastest front wheel drive LS4 powered vehicle. I
might have to knock you guys off that pedestal. I don't know.
Go for it. It's all yours.
It's all yours, because I tell you what,
no, they don't even want it. They're like, yeah, do it.
Yeah, do it. I hated that car.
Oh man.
Wow.
You do a turbo on it, or?
Yeah, big single. But that's the car I was talking about the torque steer on, because it would launch straight, great, but as soon as it shifted, it
Grab
just
second gear.
like a car that you put the shift kit in and it chirps the tires. Same deal, except this is front wheel drive, and it has an open diff, and you can't get a limited slip for them. So it's gonna knock one of them tires loose and keep the other one hooked up, and then it, you know, it just tears the steering wheel out of your hand. And 700 horsepower and torque steer is not fun.
Yeah, we were running 9s at 150 miles an hour, launching in second gear and completely killing the power in the 2-3 shift. But that's how much effort we put into killing the power and the torque on that. And as soon as it would go into third and you were straight, it would just lay the coal down, and that thing would show up in another zip code.
Yeah, it gained 35 miles per hour in the second eighth. You know, the back half of the track. I mean, it was magical. Like once you got past those stupid shifting baloney, I mean, it was just magic on the top end. I mean, it was smooth, straight, you just felt yourself just.
And when you were putting that together, did you work with LS4 King at all, or did you guys do it all on your own?
So we actually built that he had a LS4 front wheel drive challenge that he was going to put on. And then COVID hit right when that whole thing started. And we were actually building the Talon for that event. And we basically won every category of that. But I think because of the COVID, he wasn't able to, make that whole deal happen. We were basically the only ones that participated. And so unfortunately that deal didn't work out. So
yeah, I've been friends with Brandon for a long time because we both come from the W body community back in the day. Okay. So
hey guys, I gotta jump ship.
Well, you probably want to stick around like 2 more minutes because I think Terry was going to talk about his upcoming project that I went to Chicago and picked up.
Well, I can't tell you guys exactly what it is, but I will give you a hint. Okay, I'll give you a hint. Me, Lewis Lee, and Tyler, we got something going on, and we're gonna. I'm a big GM fan, but I think this one I'm gonna. What's it called? I'm gonna go outside the GM parameter. I know Maco Man's like aching to know what it is. Look at
how far out of that parameter, Terry? Right or left? Which way are you going?
I'm going. Well, I'm not sure which direction, but I'll tell you this: it had something to do with Joe Zobler.
Okay. Oh, okay. I got an idea. That puts me in the direction.
He puts you in the direction, right?
Yep.
You know what? I'll tell you what brand, but I won't tell you what car. All right. Mopar.
Well, that's what I think.
As soon as you say Joe Zopler, you know it's a Mopar. But,
it's a Mopar.
But if you decide you're going to be doing a Hurricane, you better be getting us involved because we're looking to do one of those right there. That is something that we've got our eyes on.
Well, I'm gonna make the announcement. Like when we get the car somewhat in better shape and everything like that. When we're ready to put the engine in. Because you'll be seeing posts soon, probably, because I don't want to upset anyone because what route I'm going as far as a drivetrain. I think everyone knows what route I'm going. Yeah. But I'm going to give everyone the opportunity if they have a Hellcat hanging around or a 6.0 Hemi, hey, listen, we accept it. We accept it.
Or that Godzilla.
Hey, listen, we will accept it. But if you don't want to see an LS be put in a Mopar, and you want to stop me, send one of those engines on over. Send a on over.
We're gonna dress Terry up for a video like Smokey the Bear, and he's gonna say only you can prevent LS swap.
No pause.
Nice.
Yeah,
look at Brian. Look at him.
We've gotten beat up because we're starting to get known for un-LSing cars.
Yeah, well, and that's one of the things I was gonna say too. One of my earlier questions I was thinking earlier today was like, oh, I wonder how much hate they get for not doing V8 swaps. And I'm like, probably not that much because a lot of people are really getting burned out on seeing LSs and stuff. Let me tell you, like my buddy Joe, he's a diehard Ford Mustang, Ford power guy. And he's like, yo, I would really like to see a 4200 in a Fox body. That would be sweet.
We've got 2 of them, but funny story is he went 908 at 151 miles an hour with his twin turbo LS and pulled the engine out to put a 4200 in. So in a station wagon, the Fairmont wagon, 908, 151, pull it. Let's put a 6-cylinder in it.
Yeah. Hey,
are those engines durable though? I mean, like how many passes can you make? I mean, is it going to blow up after the first pass, or, I mean, how durable are these 4200s?
On a totally stock bottom end, I was telling these guys earlier, I took it on Midwest Drags and 850 street miles, and I probably made 12 to
14 passes.
Yeah, I think 14 passes, and a lot of them were hot laps. Like literally, as soon as I got through this, return road right back into the staging lines, a lot of them, the lanes were like almost empty. I literally like rolled right back into the burnout box and just, made another pass.
940s.
Yeah, 940 after 940, pulling the wheels every single time. Just because I was trying to, turn the wick up and try to get the thing into the eights. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. But totally stock bottom end. 700 wheel horsepower. It lasted the whole week doing that. So
the fact that you're in the nines, man, is impressive.
Yep.
Hey, Ray, a couple weeks ago when I cut off the live, did you guys, were you able to stay on?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because we do an after party after Lewis, the old man, goes to bed. We hang out and we start talking about, sandwiches and music.
Well,
and
the real reality is I'm the old man, but Lewis has to go to work. I don't. So,
So do I.
Yeah.
Somebody has to be an adult in the morning.
Ray, you also have the coolest shirt. So,
it's my Milner shirt. Sure.
Milner.
Well, yeah, because it's got my name on it, man. It's got Ray's Automotive. Come on.
Ray's Automotive.
Well, Nelson's, I appreciate you guys coming on.
Yep.
And you're welcome anytime. Your family now, so you can come just hang out with us. You don't have to be a guest. Just, if you want to talk about something or listen to us tell lies, just come anytime.
Cool.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, we appreciate it. And I'm sure we'll be getting in touch because Tyler, he steals ideas from me. I steal ideas from him, so I can see something going in somewhere.
Yep. We're all in the collective family now. It's like we're the real version of the Fast and the Furious family. It's all about the family here. So
yeah, really. Yep.
Well, if folks want to see real hot rodding going on, it's happening in a lot of different shops in the country, and everybody who's taken the time to stop by and look at what's going on there, they walk away with it's scratching their head like, wow, this still happens. It's really neat to see the reaction of folks to see real genuine car crafting and hot rodding going on.
So let's keep driving our gas vehicles.
Okay.
Gasoline forever, baby.
I'm going to do a closing and then you guys can do your after party.
All right.
So everybody in Facebook and YouTube, please like, share, and subscribe and let people know what we do and how we do it here. And we appreciate our guests and all of the usual guys that hang out with us. So everybody have a good night, and we'll see you next week.
Hi, Lewis.
Take care,
Thanks
Lewis.
for having us.
see you, Lewis.